Hello and welcome. As the youngest modern president of a Central American nation, he implemented changes that made him a respected, though frequently controversial character. His more recent efforts to promote sustainable development at a global level have made him something of an ambassador for the planet. This week on One-on-One, meet the savvy and exceptionally articulate former Costa Rican president, José María Figueres. Despite tough shoes to step into, José María Figueres proved himself to be one of Costa Rica's most able political figures. His father, Don José Figueres, or Don Pepe, dominated the country's political landscape as a president 3 times, and famously the general who abolished the army. Figueres honed his skills at the prestigious American Military Academy West Point and later at Harvard University. In 1988, the Nobel Peace Laureate President Oscar Arias asked Figueres to head up the national railway system, soon after which he became Minister of Foreign Trade and then Minister of Agriculture. His presidency from 1994 to 1998 saw some tough decisions to keep the country on track. Out of office for more than a decade now, José María Figueres concentrates on issues of sustainable development, traveling the world to bring together like minds and much-needed resources. Mr. President, great to talk with you.
Thank you so much.
You come from a small country, but your perspective is very globalized. What is it that has shaped that perspective?
A variety of different issues, but to begin with, I think a part of my family upbringing. Both my parents are very international in terms of their focus and their work and their concerns with respect to the world that we live in. And then I have been fortunate enough to kind of migrate during my life from 10 years in the private sector, which was very international as well, into 10 years in public service. Obviously, there's an international chapter to that, into what I'm doing now, which is very much international work.
Do you miss the politics? It's been almost a decade since you were out of politics.
I miss the policy, but not the politics. Politics is very, very, very hard, very difficult. You pay a very large, very big personal toll while you're involved in politics. And Costa Rica, my country, as you know, is a very consolidated democracy, but with a very harsh political system. So I don't miss the politics, but I miss the policy.
Was it hard, I mean, when running a small country like Costa Rica, to get the voice heard on the international stage?
It is always hard. It is always hard because, of course, on the international arena, there are many different agendas and many different concerns. But in that respect, we have been very fortunate and blessed over many years because Costa Rica has always managed to stand out for values and ideals that are cherished by many around the world. So when a small country comes forward with a position of strength in terms of democracy, in terms of human rights, in terms of sustainable development and a clean environment, and it has the credentials of having done that, it is heard above and beyond what would expect for its small size.
How has all that experience you got during those years, you served in politics and a number of posts we'll touch on, helped you with what you're doing nowadays?
It gave me much more of an understanding for the challenges that the world is facing in terms of its development. And today I focus on many of those different challenges as the Chief Executive Officer of Concordia 21, which is a social investment vehicle based out of Spain. We look at different policy issues and we look at different development issues around the world with the objective of being able to contribute to their solution, even if in a small way.
Your father, Don José Figueres, known as Don Pepe, was president 3 times in Costa Rica, considered the father of modern-day Costa Rica. Was it inevitable that you'd follow in his shoes?
Not really. My father is the only general that I have known of that abolished his own army. He came up victorious of a civil war to reinstate, a revolution to reinstate democracy in Costa Rica. And one of the first steps he took as head of the new military junta was, of course, to constitutionally abolish the army in Costa Rica. And since then, that has given us a tremendous advantage to be able to save what others spend on weapons and armies and invested in health and education and infrastructure.
In fact, he tore down the barracks and made them into, he said this is going to be now dedicated for educational purposes.
He made them into museums and made them into schools and high schools, yes. But getting back to the legacy of my father and my participation in politics, you know, Riz, I grew up in a family where we had politics for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner. And the last thing I wanted to do, quite frankly, was get into the world of politics. So I took a very different route. When I graduated from high school, I wanted to study outside Costa Rica because such a small country, the son of the president, I didn't think I was going to get a very fair shake studying in those conditions. And I applied for a scholarship and I came to study at the West Point, the military academy. My father almost collapsed when he heard I had gotten the scholarship. This is the man that abolished the army, and now his son goes to West Point.
Prestigious military academy, that's right.
Yes, and with a very good educational system. But in spite of all those good arguments, I could never really even convince him to come to my graduation.
How were those early years with him? How well did you get to know him, considering his position?
Very well. Very well, because we had a very intense relationship in spite of his public life and his dedication to Costa Rica. My father was just an extraordinary person. I learned from him many things, Riz, but I learned from him, amongst others, that no matter what type of work a human being has, be it the most ordinary work or the most sophisticated and challenging, it equally dignifies the person that is working in that situation. And I learned from him that one should have respect and treat others the way one expects to be treated.
What do you remember of the early years in, I think it's La Lucha, is it, the town that your father actually established in 1928, where you grew up?
Yes. I remember many things. I remember those were great family moments. I remember going to school with the children of the workers on the farm, sharing with them in their daily lives. I remember doing a lot of horseback riding up and down those rugged mountains and terrain in Costa Rica. I remember, quite frankly, many of the visits and many of the people that came to speak to my father about different national or international challenges.
How aware were you as you grew up of what he was doing, how radically different his move was and how he was reforming the country?
I was very much aware because my mother, who has been an extraordinary civil servant, a trained social worker, was always very careful to bring us, the children, along in terms of explaining what they were working on, in terms of sharing with us the vision that they had for the country, and in terms of embedding in us from a very, very starting age the commitment to public service. She would often say, and she still says that to me, you know, you have been blessed by many opportunities, you have to give back. There are many people that don't have these opportunities, you have to give back. If you have something, it is then therefore more of an obligation to give back. And she is passionate about her work, a relentless worker. From her, I think I have inherited very much that kind of stamina, that when things are down and you think you don't have a way forward, you still look for a way to go on top of the obstacles and continue to advance.
Now, you came from actually what was quite a big family because you were the eldest of 4 siblings and actually had 2 elder brother and sister, stepbrothers from your father's first marriage.
Yes.
Was it a competitive environment with 6 children around, on and off?
It's always a competitive environment when you have those brothers and sisters. But it was a very nice environment. We got along well. We also had our fights, as most families have. And both my father and my mother were always very, very careful to make sure that we had the best of relationship amongst the children. They often said to us, when we're not here, you have ourselves, and you will rely on yourselves. And no matter what difficulties each one of you is moving forward in life, you may agree with your brother or sister or not agree with what they have done, but you have an obligation to be there and to help them out, whatever it is.
Now, of course, you're saying that you were a priority, you as the children were a priority for both your mother and father, but considering their jobs and very demanding positions, how hard was it to get that quality time with them?
It was very hard. It was very hard because, as you well say, they were always full of activities. But our meals together were meaningful moments of family discussion. So breakfasts in the morning, which everybody attended, lunches, which about 50% attended, and then dinners, whoever was there to have dinner together, were always great moments to be able to enjoy a good conversation. On a lot of the trips that my father took with my mother within the country, visiting different communities, checking out on infrastructure works that were being built by the government, or looking at where programs needed to be rolled out on the social aspects of health and educational facilities. They took us along, sometimes with our full willingness to come along, sometimes not. As we were growing up, we wanted to stay home, go out with the friends, attend a party, watch more TV, whatever. That was not always an option. My parents considered that accompanying them, learning how others lived and what could be done to improve their quality of life was part of our upbringing.
Have you applied the same rules with your children now, obviously being president yourself with Jose Maria and Eugenia?
Not as well as my parents did, but I have to say that I have picked up in a very, very, very rewarding fashion with Jose Maria and Eugenia. Today, Riz, we don't only have the relationship of a father with his children, we have the relationship of best friends. Eugenia today is studying in Spain at the Instituto de Empresa, getting her master's degree. We communicate often, we talk about different challenges, different issues, and with Jose Maria, I have a very wonderful and special relationship.
Mr. President, we've got more questions for you. We're going to take a short break here. We're back with more one-on-one in just a moment.